on our bill. I want to talk about the EDA first, and then I'll talk about what most of us don't realize, because most of us haven't taken the time to look. There's 80 economic development programs in the federal government through 4 agencies that spend $6.6 billion a year. Not one of them has a metric on it to see if it's successful. We've heard all morning about $3,000 per job. That's all self-reported stuff, no oversight on it, no committee oversight on it, no hard work to see. There's not a metric on one of these programs to see if it's working. And now we have a bill on the floor to spend another $500 million a year on something we have no idea what. We have anecdotal evidence, but what does the OIG say? The OIG says, first of all, this program has been used as a congressional slush fund to direct money to friends of members of Congress. That's what they say. Fully 1/3 of the projects in this never come to completion. So the money that was spent on it ends up being totally wasted. And we're reauthorizing a bill that nobody can show the statistics that it is in fact effective. And it's not just that we're reauthorizing this bill, we have 79 other programs. Ask yourself a question. We're $14 trillion in debt. We're nearly bankrupt. We're running a $1.5 trillion deficit, and we've got a bill on the floor to spend $500 million, and we don't know whether it works or not. We claim through anecdotal, we see positive things every now and then. Well, you know, there's positive outcomes to illness too. But the fact is we don't know what we're doing. And what the Congress ought to be doing is saying, if in fact it's a role for the federal government to have economic development activities, then we ought to center it in one area, and we ought to have 1 or 2 programs, not 80, with 80 sets of administrators, 80 sets of commissions, and $6.6 billion a year, of which half of it doesn't accomplish any purpose for the American people other than make the senators and congressmen feel good because they think they may have done something. So the whole idea that we would put forward a bill that has never truly been oversighted in terms of the way everybody else would oversight the way they spend their money to see if it's effective in the whole, not anecdotal evidence of one company or one benefit, put it all together. And if we have a role, let's put together a program that will work, 1. Number 2, that has metrics on it so we can measure whether or not it's effective when we're spending. We're actually borrowing the money to do this. By the way, if we actually pass this bill and $500 million gets spent, we're going to borrow $200 million from the international financial community to do it. And when we know 1/3 of it's wasted, that just doesn't make any sense. So the whole idea of Congress passing this EDA bill in light of not doing oversight on the other 79 economic development programs under the other 4 agencies is the definition of insanity. We don't know what we're doing. Now let's talk about regulation for a minute. There's well over $2 trillion in the United States sitting in small, medium, and large businesses right now that's not invested for jobs. Now, why is that? Why are people afraid to go out and invest and get a return on capital? It's because they don't see any clarity in the future. And the administration that we have today has issued 40% more regulations, 40% more regulations than any administration in history in the first 2 years. And one of the reasons people don't have confidence is they can't handle the regulatory framework that's coming at them so fast. The other thing I've observed is that when regulations are written, they're oftentimes written without people with the real knowledge of what they're writing the regulations for. 80% of the regulations written in this country are written by lawyers within the agency with which they're doing it. Now, I like lawyers, that's good enough, but how about having somebody that has real experience in the area at which they're writing a regulation rather than a lawyer write a regulation for? A great example is one of the good things about the new health care bill was going to be where we combine things together into accountable care organizations, where we end up putting hospitals and doctors and physical therapists and mental health workers all together, and then we work as a team so we can cut the cost and not have duplication and get better outcomes. The regulations on that were 220 pages long with 65 things you have to do every day on every patient to report back to the federal government. Well, that's just idiotic. It's asinine. And yet that's the regulations that came out on one of the, what I view as one of the few positive things about the Affordable Care Act. The senator from Maine outlined the cost of business regulation to small businesses and large businesses. It's $1.7 trillion a year. That's fully 12% of our GDP is the cost of regulations that are coming from the federal government. And all this bill says is a way to force the administration and the agencies, and it doesn't matter if it's a Republican or Democratic agency or administration, they're both the same. Doesn't have anything to do with what party's in power in the administration. But to hold the agencies accountable that they'll look at the impact of the regulations that they write so that they're not counterproductive to our country. We're at a time period where we're at great risk as a nation. Great risk. Because we're so overly exposed on our debt and our deficit. For every 1% increase of interest rates that we're going to see next year, it's going to cost us, the taxpayers of America, $150 billion additional. And there's no question we're going to see interest rates rise in this country. So to not create the confidence of the small and medium businesses to go out and build that next production line or build a way to produce this next new idea, because what they're seeing is so much blowback from an unaccountable, misdirected federal government. And so what Senator Snowe wants to do is totally connected with common sense, but you know, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that, and the excuse is we haven't been through committee. Well, let me tell you, a third of the bills that come to the floor of the Senate have never been through the committee. And now we're saying an amendment has to come through the committee? It's ludicrous. It's also false. It is, we really don't want to let go of, we don't trust the American people. That's what it really says, is we really don't trust the American people to use common sense. And the reason we don't is because we have no connection with common sense whatsoever in this body. And because we can't figure it out, we don't think they can. And so Big Brother has to tell you every time, every location, at every situation what you can do. And the thing that's changed in my adult lifetime is when I was a medical device manufacturer in the 70s, the presumption was on the government to prove that I was doing something wrong. With our regulatory framework now, the presumption is on you, the American citizen, to prove you didn't do something wrong. And that's why this over-regulation, this attendance to detail that matters nothing except on the top of a pen, a gnat on the top of a pen, and it's out there, and it is so costly in terms of the cost of compliance that makes no difference in terms of somebody's outcome. But the main thing it's costly is it's costing us jobs. It's costing us the very thing that built this country, is the idea that you can go put together an idea and put it out there and you can build on that idea with hard work, minimal capital, and you can make it a success. Except the thing that's blocking that now is the regulations that are coming from the federal government. And this is a very straightforward bill. It's just hold the bureaucrats accountable. And if they're not going to be held accountable, you've got a way to hold them accountable. I don't get it. I don't get why anybody would be objectionable to this. Because it's not stopping regulations. It's just saying you got to figure out whether it's prudent. And if you're not following the Regulatory Flexibility Act, then we're going to make you, because we're going to give you a basis through a court of law to be able to do that. Now, what's wrong with that? Nobody's addressed what's wrong with that. What they've just said is, no, we don't like it. We don't want it. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure an amendment that will actually fix the problems in this country, that will actually start creating jobs, that will actually move money sitting on the sideline into investment to create opportunity for new jobs for the Americans, when we have 17 million Americans who really want to work that can't, we're going to defeat it. We're so disconnected with what really is important in this country. It is so frustrating. I'm surprised I still have hair in my head. Senator Snowe knows more about small business in this Senate than any other senator. She's worked on it for years. She knows the problem. She's offered a solution that is common sense, that will work, that won't cost a lot of money, but will rein in the bureaucracy when they do the wrong thing or they don't follow the law. And for us to say, nope, not going to do it because there may be a small amount of risk that something might go wrong, that's exactly the same way the bureaucracies work. And let me tell you how they work. They never do what's best for the country. They do what's safe for the bureaucracy. And that's why we have so much regulation. It's because they don't want to get criticized. You know, you can't walk through life without getting criticized. Nobody's perfect. And no agency's perfect. So let's hold them accountable. Let's help them be better. Let's be uplifters to them. Let's put some tools there that will enable us to have a good regulatory framework that actually accomplishes the purpose of regulations, but doesn't destroy what small amount of manufacturing and business we have left. With that, Madam Chairman, I'd like to put a statement into the record and would yield the floor.
Without objection. The senator from Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand our side has about 50 minutes left in this debate. We'll be voting on the snow